But if something is working for you, why not just keep diving into it? If it's not working for you, then try 5 different platforms until you see the one that shows the most benefit. Then you go all in deep into this one.
Hey everybody, welcome back. Today we have a very special episode. We have Simon Chow on the podcast, and we're going to be talking about all things podcast, community, being an introvert, and actually not just going to networking events, but creating network events and the pieces to look for in the right kinds of networking events. Talking about the overshare, the oversell. It's an action-packed, valuable episode. Can't wait to share it with you. So welcome to the show, Simon.
Hello. How's it going?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Good. We're both in Vancouver. You're in Vancouver, right?
Yeah, we're just outside of Vancouver. So nice to have a fellow West Coaster. I feel like most people who I talk to are on, either the eastern side or, down in the States. But nice to chat with someone on this side.
Yeah, I also have a podcast, well, 2 podcasts. I've probably done over 130 episodes now, and I've interviewed maybe 8 people in Vancouver, and then the rest of the 120 plus are all across the U.S. and Canada. So
for sure. So tell me a little bit about those 2 podcasts. What are the different topics? What are you covering?
Yeah, so my first podcast I actually started in 2020, in the beginning of COVID. Currently the CMO of BC Jobs, and was already the VP of marketing at BC Jobs at that time. And obviously when COVID happened in 2020, we couldn't do any more in-person events, right? So we had to think of a strategy to connect with job candidates and companies virtually. And I have always been a huge fan of podcasts. Never thought about starting my own podcast, but COVID kind of forced us to transition. And so early 2020, I started my first podcast. It was around the jobs market, interviewing companies that were still hiring, like asking them, are you guys still hiring? What is hiring like? And then just kind of giving tips on the other end of the stick, the candidates, teaching them how to stand out during COVID in a post-pandemic world. And so you recorded about, I think we got to episode 70-ish, 70 or 80. I think it was 80 actually. And then after 2 years, when COVID slowly ended and went back to normal life, we found that the podcast wasn't as needed anymore. And we saw our numbers kind of slowly dwindling down. I think we were at like 2,000 downloads per month at that time. But when we started off, we were strong, 4,000 or 5,000 downloads per month. And so I made a decision. I talked to my team. We're like, maybe we should end it. But we already had all the mic set up. We had the lights. We had everything, camera. And we're like, it would be such a waste to just stop podcasting. And I loved podcasting. And so last year I decided to start my own podcast called Marketing on Mars. And that's where I just interview C-suite and founders on my show. We've now just completed 72 episodes. And it's been really, really fun so far.
Incredible. Had someone ever told me that I would have a podcast, I years ago would have just said, no way, like that's definitely not my space, but I absolutely love it as well. So and I think it really is, having a podcast is definitely a bit of a passion project. There's lots of, different aspects to starting, managing, running, and continuing to grow that podcast. So you have to enjoy it for sure. So you are no longer doing the podcast with BC Jobs, but you're still at BC Jobs. Is that correct?
Yeah, still there.
Yes. Okay. And so for those who aren't on the West Coast side of Canada, do you want to, give a short, segue of what is BC Jobs? How does it tie in? What is it serving? Obviously, there's this piece of, talking to people who are still hiring and people who, and the actual candidates. But on a broader sense outside of the podcast, what is BC Jobs and how does it serve the BC people?
BC Jobs, we're like, think Indeed, ZipRecruiter,
okay, yeah,
LinkedIn. When you're looking for a job, where do you go first to find a job? And right now, in the current climate that we're living in, especially the last 3-4 years, it's been those big job boards.
Yeah.
Indeed, ZipRecruiter, LinkedIn. Those are probably the top three. Years ago, maybe Monster.com, if everyone remembers that. That
Yeah.
was the big job board of the time. BC Jobs is exactly that, but with a name like BC Jobs, you can imagine very limited to just the Vancouver, BC area. It's a job board essentially. You
Okay.
post your jobs and you can apply for jobs. Very very simple, and they've been around for 20 years now. I was part of the recent acquisition. They recently was acquired by a private equity firm. So I was part of that transaction, and I came in and started serving as the VP of marketing. Now I'm currently the CMO there. So that's what BC Jobs does.
Interesting. So, and by adding that, if we kind of talk on a broader sense, by adding the niche of saying, hey, we're the BC job board, hoping to then filter out, because I think one of the biggest criticisms I hear when people post jobs on Indeed is that they're getting people, from all over the world are applying to these jobs, which is great if it's a remote job. I truly believe in right person for the job. And on our agency, we hire all over the world because it's a remote position. But now you have people who, it's like they're looking for a plumber, they're looking for a carpenter, they're looking for an electrician, and they've got people, applying from the other side of the world. This, in a non-digital space, it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, so BC Jobs is very good for those types of roles when you have to hire locally.
Yeah.
I don't know your listeners; they might be all over the place, but for the Vancouver listeners, like you'll know Save on Foods, you'll know PNE, you'll know TELUS, you'll know BC Transit. Those are the companies that they've been on the job board for 15 years because they know that BC Jobs will have mostly local candidates.
Right.
Now, for those other like tech companies where they can hire anywhere in the world, they can hire in Toronto, LA, Vegas. I don't know why I'm throwing these cities out there, but any city around the world, BC Jobs might not be the best for you because you're getting a lot of local talent, but then you're kind of eliminating yourself from the rest of the world. There's a lot of good talent everywhere. Vancouver is not the only place with good talent, but there is a lot of, if you're looking for that in-person kind of role, carpenter roles, like you mentioned, and like welders, like you're going to be on BC Jobs. So we find a lot of those roles are there, but the Vancouver tech scene is growing. And because government fund grants and those kind of programs are so strong in Vancouver, a lot of tech companies still have to hire locally, and BC Jobs is the best for that because you can't use your grant to hire a marketing specialist that lives in New York, for example. As good as they are, your grants just won't get you there. So then you have to use like a job board like BC Jobs. And so we still have a lot of tech companies, and maybe we can dive into that. I've been running a lot of tech events locally in the city, but yeah, that's essentially what BC Jobs does in a nutshell.
Incredible. I think serves such an important market. I don't know a single business owner, and not just in the local space, but I don't know. We focus obviously on service-based business owners, and hiring good people will always be the biggest pain point for growth, is bringing the right people in, training them, retaining them. And so you've got this need where businesses, you can invest in new systems, you can hire, outsource marketing, you can do all of these different things. But when it comes to actually having the people in your business that your clients want to deal with, and what that is such a specific strategy and so key, because you can't just find people and implement them overnight. Actually creating that process of bringing people in, training and whatnot is a long-term strategy.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about people. You interview 10 successful people and you ask them, what's your number one tip for success? And probably half of them will say people. It's all about the people. And then the other half will talk about systems, because systems are also important. People and systems, if you have those two in place, even if you don't have the best product in the world, the most shiny object that everyone's going to gravitate towards, even if you don't have the best tech stack, even if you don't have all that going for you, and if you're not like a big crazy innovator, if you have good team and you have good systems, you're probably going to win there. Mix that with a great product and a very innovative solution, you probably have a very, very good chance for success. So yeah, people is a huge part of that. And yourself, Tiffany, you're a business owner, and any other business owners listening, like, they will probably agree with that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you started talking about some events. Is that kind of post-COVID, or you were also doing events pre-COVID? Obviously, obviously no events during COVID, but is that a post-COVID addition, the events?
Yeah, so pre-COVID, people, I was actually very new to the city. I started my career in San Francisco. I worked for a blockchain company, so I moved around between San Fran, LA, Korea, and Seoul, Korea, and Vancouver a lot. So I never really built my following in Vancouver. Also, I started off as investment banking analyst, and then I moved over to being a marketer. I was always very analytical, so I spent a lot of time behind the computer. I was always the behind the scenes guy. So if you invited me to events, I most likely would have never attended any events. Like, I was
Yeah.
as far as being an events guy as possible. That's
Right.
just to kind of paint the full picture.
Right.
The reason why I got into events, my very, very first event that I ran was last November in my entire life. And it's, I told you I have a couple of podcasts. At that time, I had recorded about 90 episodes of podcasts already. And
Okay.
so all I wanted to do was bring a few of the guests that were local in Vancouver and treat them out to a beer to thank them for believing in me in my couple of podcasts that I started. You, as a podcaster, you know how hard it is to even complete 20 episodes, but to
Mm-hmm.
have 90 people support you I needed to give back. So I invited 6 founders out, and selfishly, because I also wanted to become a better founder myself. I wanted to surround myself with other better founders. So I just got 6 founders, and we were at Earl's.
Yeah.
We had a couple of drinks. You know Earl's, like, very, very popular locally. We just got a few beers, and it was so much fun. But I had plans to go to Korea, so I left for 3 months. And when I came back, I'm like, I kind of want to do the founder thing again.
Mm-hmm.
And so I messaged all the 6 founders, and I said, let's do another happy hour. I continue to call it a founders happy hour to keep it very casual.
Yeah.
And they all brought 1 or 2 founders. And so that second one I did, it grew to about 15 founders. And we just literally had beers. I'm like, this is so much fun. Let's do it one more time. So we did it another time next month, and then 30 founders came out to that. And then just slowly, very organically, we continued to go from 30 to 35. And we just did our biggest one. I did my 7th one just last week. Amazon, AWS Startups, and Ripple Ventures co-hosted with me alongside Boast AI. They're everywhere in Vancouver.
Yeah.
If you're based in Vancouver. And then the previous founder of BC Jobs, he was one who sold the company. He also helped co-host it. So between me and 3 co-hosts, we brought 65 founders together in a room, all very kind of scaling up founders between 6 to 8 figures, recently raised money, maybe between seed to Series A in terms of size. And we just had breakfast, very non-extractional. So no one's hard selling anybody. Everyone's busy thinking about scale, so people
Mm-hmm.
and systems.
Right.
Exactly what we talked about, and that's all the conversation. And I love that, because founders of all people, they get sold to the most out of anyone that you can think of. They're being sold to by their co-founder. They're being sold to by their directors, the managers. They get sold to by their full-time employees, their contractors. They get sold to by their lawyer, their accountant, their bookkeeper, their spouse, their kids, their dog. Sometimes they get sold to by everybody, because they're the ones who hold the final check and have the final say. And so when founders want to come out to events, the last thing that they want is to be sold to by someone or be pitched to by someone. They can
Mm-hmm.
sniff a pitch from a mile away.
Yeah.
And so as a founder myself, I found it very difficult to find myself in a room. Like, I could never connect in other networking events, because any event that I would go to in the city, especially in a city like Vancouver, just seems so extractive. Everyone is trying to sell something. And so when I started it just was very casual, founders having drinks with other founders. And that philosophy stayed with me. I always make sure to tell people before I start the event, just, we're here to brainstorm. And I tell and like, curation is very important. curating and making sure the right founders are coming into the room. Founders that just started their startup 3 months ago, probably not the best founders to bring to that room because they're so brand new. They're still in that product market fit and selling stage. Not that, they might not be hard, sleazy salespeople by any means, but they're still gonna want to push their story because they haven't gotten through that growth phase yet.
And I think as business owners, we have to be so mindful of know your audience, because
Yeah.
you see people
Yes.
that really get it wrong, and it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable for everyone in the space. And so, what am I kind of alluding to? So you go to an event like that, and really it's about collaborating and discussing and brainstorming and building connections. And you're not going to, the chance of you leaving with saying like, oh, I just made $10,000, like, you shouldn't. That's not what it was for. And so many people are like, well, what did we sell? What did we grow? What did we do? And so knowing the objective of the different types of events and the power of the proximity and the connection and the community in that room is so different than, hey, I'm going to go to a conference and I'm going to get a booth and I'm going to sell to people. It's two very different things. But that the discomfort, I recently reached out to, I worked with a business owner for a couple of years on a project. It was a startup, newer startup, and working through some of the pieces, and hadn't really connected in a while. And I reached out on more of a social level. We had built a connection over a couple of years. And so I reached out more of kind of like a, hey, how's it going? Like, what's going on? Immediate sell. Oh my goodness, I have to give you the update and this and that. And it's going, this, and I need to update you on this feature and that feature. And I was like, whoa. And it's that moment. It's the same. Maybe it's a family member or someone that you see. It's like you ask them, like, oh, the weather's nice today, and they immediately jump into the sell on the business. And so there's this piece of, you obviously driven by passion, and we all want our businesses to succeed. But sometimes you actually are pushing away the right opportunities in terms of mentorship, development, community connection, because we're so focused on one piece of the business and almost forget the power of the second piece of that community and connection.
There's so many things I want to respond. Like you said so many nuggets of gold there. I'll respond to a couple of pieces. I'll add on to it actually.
Okay.
So true. Number one, community, I think, is the biggest. It's going to be your biggest driver for anyone listening that owns a business. Community is going to be your biggest lever that you can pull in 2023 and 2024, because performance marketing, third party cookie tracking is dying. So ads are not going to be as effective. And with the growth of AI technology right now, SEO is kind of uncertain. We don't know where Google is going to go with their new update. Is AI generated content going to even work anymore, or is it going to punish you? SEO and PPC is a little bit uncertain, but community is where it's at. It's real engagement. No number of likes and no number of comments on your posts on social media is ever going to amount to anything. It's good for branding, but you're not actually having conversations. But if you can do well in community, you can actually build real conversations. And to your second point of just kind of founders being so extractive and pitching you right away, I always take it back to dating. Like, if you're a first time dater, you've never dated before, and you're dating for the first time, when you go to meet new girls or guys that you're interested in, probably the first thing you're going to do is try to sell yourself. You can be like, I do this, I do that. I'm a great this, I'm a great that. And you're going to be talking about yourself a lot, not knowing that the more you ask about other people and you're interested in other people, that actually makes them more attracted to you, because you're showing genuine interest in them.
Yeah.
Right? And imagine this for a second. You go to a first time date with someone, and all you're doing is, hey, Tiffany, nice to meet you. My name is Simon. I've dated 6 girls in the past. I'm a fantastic cook, by the way. And I'll tell you, if we start dating, I'm gonna make sure that I'll have tea ready in the morning. My last girlfriend, I increased her happiness by 50%. And I guarantee you, if we date, like, I will make you the happiest person ever. I'll increase your like, if you're just talking about yourself and what you can bring to the table right away, it just sounds like you're so desperate, kind of. You can smell it, right?
Yes.
Versus if when we go on our first date and I'm like, what do you do for work? Like, and what do you do? What are your hobbies? You've always lived in Vancouver? Were you born and raised in Vancouver? And you're like more curious about the person, not pitching.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe, just maybe, you might want to go on a second date with me or a third date. But if I'm constantly pitching myself, that second date is nowhere to be found.
Mm-hmm.
I always equate business with kind of dating, especially networking with dating, because at the end of the day, it's all about relationships. Business is a people to people business.
Yeah.
It's a relationship that you have to build with other people, right? It has nothing to do with your social media handles. It has nothing to do with your following, your online following. It is the interactions that you have with other people. And so I think Vancouver, of many cities that I've been to, I've seen events in New York, San Francisco, LA. Other cities seem to get it. They understand.
Yeah.
Vancouver, we just don't have enough of this.
Mm-hmm.
And especially for the early stage founders, we don't have the ecosystem to train founders to network in a non-extractive manner. So 100% agree with you.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's the same thing as if you were on that first date and you start talking about wedding venues. You scare people off. Like, even if that person
Yeah.
thinks that might be, there's still it's like this, even if everything is amazing and that person is who you may end up marrying.
It could be.
You may have just completely scared them off because the intensity in which you started with was like, whoa. It's
like, just calm down.
Exactly. Exactly. Because I mean, you hear those, there's to equate it to dating. There are people who go and get married 3 weeks in, but it's not. And so, but how many people could have potentially got married and got scared off because someone just cranked up the intensity? It's networking events. I feel like there's a couple of different. You talk about the right people in the room. We've all been to a bad networking event of some kind where you get there and you're like, well, everyone's just in a different part of their journey. They're in a completely different industry. They're in a completely different space in their journey. And there's always, different connections to be made. But in terms of learning from each other and whatnot, I was watching a video recently, someone shared, and Mr. Beast, obviously big YouTuber, everybody talks about him, and he was talking about how when he started with this group of people and they were all working on their videos together, and they would, get online together and analyze what each other was doing so that they could learn from each other. If everyone did one thing and so this video didn't do well and that video didn't do well and this one, okay, well, what was different about the one that did do well? And just being able to connect with other people made it so that they could test things faster, they could progress faster, they could learn from each other. And it's, I think, such a valuable resource. So often people are like, well, I don't want to share what I'm doing, I don't want to. And so it's getting into the right spaces where you're sharing with people who can add value to each other and not, trusted space, very important.
Exactly. I actually, one of the other communities that I run a LinkedIn creators community. We meet once a month.
Yeah.
Over Zoom.
Yeah.
We usually get about 20 to 30. Our biggest one, we had about 35 people come out, and everyone has a strong LinkedIn presence.
Yeah.
So, you can imagine anywhere between 30 to upwards of 150 likes per post, and they post very, very regularly. And these guys get it. You can't do it, on your own.
Mm-hmm.
You can't understand everything on your own. And if you're not engaging with your audience, then you're not building a real following. So it's a way for us to meet once a month, not just through the comments.
Yeah.
Because as important as the comments are, and the social media platforms, all about the engagement and the interactions. Totally. The more interactions you get, the more it gets pushed to more people, and so you get a greater reach. But the real connections matters way more. And so I started this in February. So it's been half a year now, 6 months now. We meet once a month. We started with literally, again, 6-7 people in a room, in a virtual room, and then it grew to 12, and then 15, 20. Some weeks better than others, but our most recent one, we had about 21, and now we're getting new, different moderators. We break out everyone into smaller groups, because you can imagine 20 people in a Zoom room. Mm-hmm. You're gonna start maybe talking over each other. So we created structures where you split up into small groups of 4. So
right,
call it breakout sessions, and then we come back to the big room, We do that once a month. And to your point, yeah, it's so important to have, like, whatever you're doing, find a community. There's always going to be a community for you.
Yeah.
I have a community for founders, a community for LinkedIn creators. And if you're, you're a bookkeeper, maybe, or like an accountant, maybe there's going to be groups for you there as well, right? There's always going to be a group for you. Find that community and be involved in it. And if not, create it. If there's nothing out there, create it yourself.
Yeah, I think there's so much value there. Now, I have a couple questions. So LinkedIn for me is full of two types of people. People from my previous life in corporate that I worked with or were customers, and people who are trying to sell me something. My LinkedIn inbox is nothing but cold DMs, and so I rarely open the platform. So we schedule to LinkedIn based on like, hey, we're running content elsewhere, and LinkedIn is a box in our social media scheduler. So why not? We filter out, I would say, about half of what we do elsewhere to keep it on the more professional, less of the like kind of more typical Instagram like engagement type posts, more professional, less emojis, if you will.
Yeah.
So how can someone, and if I think of some of even our client base who we've talked to about LinkedIn, and people are like, it's just not for me.
But if something is working for you,
really
why not just keep diving
like
into it?
No value there. I'm not providing value. People are not providing value. They're just trying to sell me something. How do you make that transition to providing the right type of content on LinkedIn where you're connecting with people and getting engagement? What is that? What was that shift?
Yeah, it really depends on who do you want to talk to.
Right.
And where are they at? So are you, like, let me ask you, are you using Instagram? What's your number one channel right now?
Facebook, YouTube.
Okay, why Facebook?
I think that the communities, the groups on Facebook is where we connect with the most people, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and you're creating content on Facebook, and you're also having real conversations with people, right?
Right.
Okay, and you're building a following. Then that's your channel. You don't have to think about LinkedIn. LinkedIn works for me because I have real conversations with real people, and that's grown my following.
Right.
And that's most of the people that I want to talk to, because I want to talk to founders and C-suites, they're all on LinkedIn. And those conversations, my conversations. And so for me, I found a lot of value, and I have a lot of real conversations with people. And that's why I stay on LinkedIn and I don't go on Facebook and Instagram. Not because if it's not working for you, then try 5 different platforms until you see the one that shows the most benefit. Then you go all in. I would say this though, you're right. There are a lot of cold messages on LinkedIn, but over time, when you build enough value, like my post regularly will get between 90 to 140 organic likes, but it's taken 10 months to get there.
Right.
I've had to start so many conversations in order to build that following. I had to be on LinkedIn religiously. Nothing that's worth it in life comes for free, and nothing comes immediately in a snap of a finger. It took 10 months to grow this. I remember the first 3-4 months, I'll probably get 1,000 or 2,000 eyeballs, maybe per month.
Yeah.
And each post that I posted had 7-8 likes, and it's very discouraging. But I just kept going. I kept giving. I kept liking and engaging on other people's content. And just to give you some numbers, because everyone wants to know what is the secret. Yeah. There's no secret, but I would probably have to like and engage on 10 people for one person to even think about engaging back.
Right.
So in order for me to grow so now let's do the numbers, let's do the math a little bit. In order for me to grow to 90 likes per post, I had to be liking 900 different people's content per week. And so I just kind of kept these numbers. Obviously, as my profile grew, right, that number became smaller and smaller. I would have to like 3 for every 1 like.
Right.
If I'm very lucky, that's very lucky. But usually it's like every 4 likes I give, I'll get 1 like back kind of thing. So in life, in business, in anything, there is no such thing as take and not give. You got to give first.
Absolutely.
Keep having a giving mindset, and then you will get back. And so whether your platform is Facebook or LinkedIn or Instagram, there's going to be real people in every single one of the platforms. There is no one size fit all or like a secret to
Mm-hmm.
social media. Choose the platform that you like the most and just go all in and provide as much value as for other people, help support other people's profile, and maybe you'll get support back. You cannot expect. I have friends that I've known for many, many years. When I post, they never support my stuff. And I don't blame them. Everyone's busy, right? Everyone nowadays has a full-time job and a side hustle. So between those 10, 11 hours, and some of them have kids and family that they have to meet, why would they want to waste their time to go out of their day to support and like Simon's post? Like, what did it get out of me?
Mm-hmm.
I understand. You can't not everyone's gonna support you, but you find the people that support you and you continue to give back all the time, consistently. Always be there for them, and they might be there for you as well.
Yeah, I think that's so. Especially when people are starting out and they expect those who they know, whether it's, family or close friends or whatever. And I would say, the more common story, we've been recording the podcast for 3 years or 3 seasons. And so, it's the more common story is those in my actual life that I knew before don't necessarily support or don't understand. But building those connections, building those groups that you're talking about, building that community, and whatnot, that's real. There's so much power there, and realizing that a lot of the people in your own life don't necessarily understand what you're really trying to do.
I don't know what it is. I think it's like human. It might be human nature, and maybe just like I said, maybe just everyone's just busy. But I know there are some people that are huge, huge supporters of me in person,
Yeah.
but online, never. They're never there online. Does that mean that they don't support you? But they're always supporting you in person. That just might not be their thing.
Yeah.
Their thing is not supporting you online. Doesn't mean that they're not supporting you. Once you separate yourself, find people that do support you online, and focus on those people. Don't focus on all your third cousin, your second cousin, or your niece that doesn't like your stuff, and be like, oh, they're not supporting me, and they're a bad friend or a bad family member, or like they're not. No, that's just not how they support you,
Right.
right? Everyone is going to support you in a different way. And in the beginning, I used to feel so. Always felt like maybe the people around me didn't support me. I'm like, why are you not supporting me? I've known you for 9 years, 10 years, and then I kind of stepped back a little bit and then asked, when have I ever been there for them? If you're always supporting them week in and week out and they never support you, that is one thing. Okay, maybe that person doesn't deserve your time, and so stop supporting them, right? Early on, I was telling you I was probably engaging on hundreds of accounts per day to build up my engagement and my following. And there were so many people that I supported for months, every single time being there for every single one of their posts and always supporting them and building them up and encouraging them. And they never once supported me back. Then I started to realize some people, like you can give up to a certain point, but at some point you need to protect your own time and not support the people that just will never support you. And there's many reasons for them to not support you, right? They have a million different reasons, and you don't have to waste time thinking about what the reasons are. Because at the end of the day, if they're not supporting you, they're not supporting you. Just move on.
I think that lesson really applies to so many parts of business where, whether it's a provider that, a service provider that you're paying and paying and paying and not getting a result. And at one point you have to say, hey,
Yeah.
I am not getting the value for my money, and so I need to make a change. And that person might be super nice. They might have been a provider for a really long time. But if you're not getting the value for money, so whatever, whether what you're paying in is time or dollars or mentorship or, all of these different things, whether it's people on your team or your customers or your community, at the end of the day, I think it's just being mindful that, everyone, whether you're a billionaire or whether you have no money, everyone still has 24 hours in a day, and being mindful of what you're investing into. Because the strategic decision to invest in engagement, to say, hey, I'm going to focus on LinkedIn in your case, and I'm going to do this, and you have a plan and a strategy, and there's a reason that you're building that community and whatnot. That's a decision. And so being strategic with that, just to say, hey, I'm just, going out here and I'm just doing a couple things willy-nilly and spending time on so many, and not that doesn't work. As a business owner, you got 24 hours and you got to have a plan.
Exactly. No, love that.
Yes.
Love that. Same thing for personal life too, right?
100%.
You have a girlfriend or a wife or whatever, or husband, boyfriend, and you're investing a lot of time and you think about the relationship, but they don't. Maybe you got to have a conversation about that. You don't have to be upset about it. Everyone at the end of the day is selfish. Everyone has their own reasons of being. Doesn't mean that they don't care or love you or support you. They just have their own way. If you're okay with the way that they love you, then that's going to work. But if you're not okay, you don't have to hold that in, because that thing that you're holding in your heart that you're not saying is just going to grow over time. It's like black mold in your heart.
Right.
And then over time, it's just going to hurt your relationship more, whether it's a personal relationship, a romantic one, or a business one, right? Speak your mind and surround yourself with people that you want to be surrounded with, right?
Yes. So much value. So what's that one tangible tip a business owner, whether that is on, the marketing side, the, different community side, what is that one tangible tip that a business owner can implement in their business right away?
Yeah, especially for service-based businesses where it's hugely based on relationship. I would say start a podcast is a great way to start. Or even if you don't start one, join as a guest on as many podcasts as possible. Yeah. Learn how to tell your story and learn how to build relationships in a non-transactional way, because in a case like this, you're not paying me for this, I'm not paying you for this. It's just a conversation. It's like it's a 40-minute out of my day, 40-minute out of your day, and it's an exchange of time, right? So I would say that podcasting is huge, and create content. Just be loud online, whether that's on Facebook, LinkedIn, or whatever.
Right.
So that's number one. And then second, as you know, I'm going to say this, just community. Join other communities or create one yourself, and just be very active IRL in real life. Because people, 2023 and 2024, people are craving for that authentic relationship and that in-person connection. So I would say those two.
Yeah, and I think to add to that, for me, if you go to some kind of networking type event and it doesn't feel good, that doesn't mean that networking events don't feel good, but to try and find the right people for you. Because I think that, one thing I've learned in my own journey is that was, much like you shared, it was something I didn't necessarily reach out for when I started, was, these in real life networking community type events. I'm definitely more introverted, and that wasn't something. But what I have learned is that the right people in a community, the right space, are things that I look so forward to, those connections and building those pieces. And so if you're thinking, oh, I have to go to that lunch again, and you're feeling like you just don't enjoy it, you don't want to go, maybe try a different lunch versus deciding you just don't want to go to the lunch at all.
Find a group that is hosted by an introvert, by the way. I'm introverted myself.
Yeah.
So when I run events, I love to do icebreakers, and I love breaking people out into smaller groups, because I understand, as an introvert myself, it's very hard for me to stand out in a very large crowd, because I don't like to step over people's toes. I don't like to interrupt people. And so I always like to separate, my groups of 30 into smaller groups of 4 or 5. It makes it so much easier to talk. So find groups that are hosted by introverts. That's usually very, very good. And I will leave with one last thing. I know we're up on time. When you ask for something, ask to give. Don't ask to sell.
Yes.
Meaning, if you're going to ask for something, like, Tiffany, just let me know, because that's an ask. Let me know, message me anytime you need help with anything podcasting related. I'm here for you. I can always, happy to brainstorm and chat. So I'm asking for your time, but only if I can support you. Versus, hey, Tiffany, message me if you need help with podcasting. I have a great, fantastic agency. I own an agency, and I've been running it for 5 years, and we're like one of the best agencies out there. Just message me anytime, and happy to help. It's a very different ask.
Very different.
ask to help, ask to give, don't ask to sell.
Love that. So powerful. Okay, Simon, where can people connect with you if they want to, check out your podcast? They want to check you out on LinkedIn. Obviously, we'll drop the LinkedIn link in the description. But where is that? Is that the best place for them to find you and connect with you?
Yeah, just like make it easy. Have one link, just my LinkedIn, Simon Chow, CHOU. I also have a little red chili pepper that's has to do with my podcast. And if you go on my LinkedIn, you'll see. But yeah, connect with me on there. I'm really active.
Awesome. Well, we'll have to go find out all about that chili pepper. Thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.